I never thought it would happen to me. Not in 2025. Not after climbing so high I'd worked 20 years to get here. Started as an intern, moved up to manager, then director, VP, and finally CEO of TechVision Enterprises, one of the few black CEOs in the tech industry. Something I was proud of, but also something that came with a weight I carried every day. The annual Tech Summit was the biggest event of the year. All the major players would be there. Google, Apple, Microsoft, and us. We weren't as big, but we were growing fast. Our new AI platform was turning heads. Ready for the big day? Asked Alex, my chief operating officer, as we walked into the hotel where the summit was being held. Born ready, I said, straightening my tie. Custom made, like my suit. When you're the face of a company worth billions, you dress the part. The lobby buzzed with people in expensive suits and dresses, all networking before the main event. I spotted familiar faces, nodded to competitors I respected, shook hands with potential partners. Mr. Chen wants to talk about that partnership before the keynote, Alex reminded me, checking his phone. Let's not keep him waiting then. We headed toward the VIP lounge. This was where the real deals happened, away from the crowds. My assistant had confirmed our access yesterday. At the entrance, a young man in a suit checked names against his tablet. James Walker, CEO of TechVision, I said with a smile. He scanned his list, frowning slightly. I don't see your name here, sir. There must be a mistake. We confirmed yesterday. Let me double-check. He scrolled through his tablet again. No, I don't have you listed for VIP access. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The one that comes when you're not sure if what's happening is a simple mistake or something else. Could you check again? TechVision Enterprises. We're platinum sponsors of the event. The young man looked uncomfortable now. I understand, sir, but I can only allow people on this list. Alex stepped forward. There's clearly been an error. We confirmed our access yesterday. Over the attendant's shoulder, I could see other executives being waved through. White executives. Is there a manager we can speak with? I asked, keeping my voice level, of course. One moment. As we waited, I noticed people glancing our way, some with curiosity, others with what looked like satisfaction. In that moment, I knew this wasn't a mistake. The manager arrived, a woman in her 40s with a practiced smile. How can I help you? We seem to have an issue with our VIP access, I explained. We're platinum sponsors and my team confirmed our access yesterday. Let me look into this. She took the tablet, scrolled through. I see the issue. We have Alex Thompson from TechVision approved for VIP access, but not you, Mr. Walker. Alex looked as confused as I felt. That doesn't make any sense. James is the CEO. Perhaps there was a miscommunication, she suggested. We can offer you access to the general conference area, which is quite nice. The message was clear. My white COO was welcome in the VIP area. I was not 20 years of fighting against this exact type of treatment rushed through my mind. The times I'd been mistaken for staff instead of an executive. The investors who would only talk to my white colleagues. The security guards who followed me in high-end stores even when I was wearing a $3,000 suit. Is there a problem here? A new voice joined our conversation. I turned to see Richard Powell, CEO of Rival Tech, our biggest competitor. White, silver-haired, looking every bit the part of a tech executive from Central Casting. Just a mix-up with the VIP list, the manager explained. Powell looked at me, then back to the manager. James Walker is one of the most important people at this conference. If he's not on your VIP list, then your list is wrong. I appreciated the gesture, but the damage was done. The humiliation had already settled in my stomach like a stone. Thank you, Richard, I said, but it seems the decision has been made. The manager looked flustered now. I'll see what I can do to accommodate you, Mr. Walker. Don't bother, I said. Alex, let's go. As we walked away, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Diane, our PR director. Where are you? The TechCrunch reporter is asking for an interview. I texted back, coming to the main hall. VIP access denied. 3 dots appeared as she typed her response. What? Alex was furious beside me. This is outrageous. We should pull our sponsorship right now. No, I said, an idea forming. We're not going to make a scene. Not yet. We did the interviews. I gave my keynote speech about innovation and the future of technology. I smiled for the cameras and shook hands with industry leaders, all while a plan took shape in my mind. That evening, back in my hotel room, I made a call to our company's general counsel, Priya. I need you to look at something for me, I said, explaining what had happened. They can't do that, she said, outrage clear in her voice, but they did, and I want to know what our options are. Legally, you have several, but what are you thinking? I laid out my plan, and there was a long pause on the other end. That's bold, she finally said. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. Our 10 board members connected virtually, some looking annoyed at the early hour. What's this about, James? Asked the board chair, Patricia. Yesterday at the tech summit, I was denied access to the VIP area despite our platinum sponsorship. My white COO was welcome, but I was not. Silence fell over the virtual meeting. That's unacceptable, Patricia said. Yes, it is, and it's why I've called this meeting. The summit is organized by Tech Forward, a company we've worked with for years. They handle many of our events. In fact, we're their biggest client. I let that sink in. I'm proposing we terminate all contracts with them, effective immediately. More. Silence. That's millions in contracts, said one board member. Yes, and I believe it's the right decision for our company and our values. The discussion lasted an hour. Some worried about the disruption, others about finding new vendors quickly. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. By noon, the news had spread. Tech Forward's stock dropped 7% on the announcement. Their CEO called me, frantic. James, we can fix this. It was a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I said calmly. It was a choice. And now I'm making mine. My phone didn't stop ringing all day. Reporters wanted statements. Other companies called to offer their services. A few other CEOs called to express support. That evening, Alex came to my office as I was preparing to leave. The event team is freaking out about finding new vendors for all our upcoming events. They'll manage, I said. The social media response has been overwhelming, mostly positive for us, disastrous for Tech Forward. I nodded, gathering my things. You knew this would happen, Alex said. It wasn't a question. I knew we had the power to make a statement, one that wouldn't be ignored. The board could have said no, but they didn't, because they understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about me being denied access to a room. This was about showing that in 2025, this kind of behavior still has consequences. As I headed home that night, I thought about the young Black professionals who would read about this tomorrow, who might see that you don't always have to smile and take it, that sometimes you have the power to change things. The next day would bring more challenges, more decisions. But for tonight, I felt a weight had been lifted. Not the weight of being one of the few Black CEOs in tech. That remained. But the weight of staying silent, of playing by rules that weren't made for people like me. Sometimes you have to rewrite the rules. The morning after we cut ties with Tech Forward, I walked into our office to find a scene I hadn't expected. People were standing, applauding. Not just a few, almost the entire floor. For a moment, I froze, unsure how to react. Diane, our PR director, approached with a tablet in hand. You might want to see this. The screen showed social media exploding with our story. The hashtag #OurTechVision stands was trending. Other companies were publicly reviewing their relationships with Tech Forward. Some were already announcing they'd follow our lead. This is bigger than I thought it would be, I admitted. People have been waiting for someone to take a stand, Diane said. You gave them that. Back in my office, I found a stack of messages. CEOs, industry leaders, even a few celebrities wanting to voice support. And mixed in were messages from everyday people, Black professionals sharing similar experiences, thanking me for not staying quiet. I was reading through them when my assistant buzzed. The board chair is here to see you. Patricia walked in, her expression unreadable. Despite yesterday's unanimous vote, I felt a twinge of concern. Board members sometimes develop second thoughts when they saw stock prices fluctuate. Have you seen the news? She asked, sitting across from me. Some of it. Tech Forward stock is down 15% now. They've issued an apology, fired the manager involved, and announced a diversity review. Too little, too late, I said. Patricia nodded. I agree. But that's not why I'm here. She placed a folder on my desk. The board has been discussing something for a while. Yesterday's events accelerated our timeline. I opened the folder. Inside was a proposal for a new division within TechVision, focused on diversity in tech, with programs for underrepresented groups, partnerships with HBCUs, and policy advocacy. We want you to lead this initiative, alongside your CEO duties, Patricia said, with a significant budget and full autonomy. I studied the proposal, surprised and moved. This wasn't a PR stunt. The planning was thorough, the commitment substantial. Why now? I asked. Because you showed us that standing by our values isn't just right, it's good business. The response to your decision has been overwhelmingly positive. Our stock is up, not down. After Patricia left, Alex came in with more updates. Tech Forward had called again, this time offering a year of free services. Several competitors had reached out with partnership offers. We've hit a nerve, Alex said. People are paying attention now. Let's make sure it's not just talk, I replied. I want concrete changes. The next few days were a whirlwind. Interviews, meetings, strategy sessions for our new diversity initiative. But amid all this, I kept thinking about what had happened at the summit, and why. On Thursday evening, I received an unexpected visitor, Richard Powell, the Rivaltech CEO who had spoken up for me at the summit. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said, standing in my office doorway. Not at all. Come in. Powell sat down, looking slightly uncomfortable. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the summit. I've been thinking about it a lot. So have I. When I saw them turning you away, I knew exactly what was happening. And my intervention, it was well-intentioned, but it shouldn't have been necessary, I finished for him. Exactly. He leaned forward. James, I've been in this industry 30 years. I've seen how it treats people who don't fit the traditional mold. But until I saw it happen to someone of your stature, a CEO of a billion-dollar company, I don't think I truly understood how pervasive it is. His honesty surprised me. Most people never see it, or choose not to. That's why I'm here, Powell said. Rivaltech has diversity programs, inclusion initiatives, all the things companies do to check boxes. But clearly it's not enough. I want to learn from what you're doing. This was unexpected. Rivaltech was larger than us, more established. They rarely followed anyone's lead, especially not ours. We're launching a major initiative, I told him, focusing on systemic change, not just window dressing. I'd like to be involved, he said. Not to take over or co-opt what you're doing, but to support it, learn from it, and implement similar changes at Rivaltech. We talked for over an hour about the tech industry's diversity problems, about experiences I'd had that he'd never faced, about concrete steps companies could take beyond just hiring diverse candidates. By the time he left, we'd outlined a joint initiative, a coalition of tech companies committed to measurable change. Rivaltech would be the first to join, but not the last. The next morning, I called a company-wide meeting. All employees, all locations connected virtually. It was time to share our plans. Many of you have heard about what happened at the Tech Summit, I began, and about our response. But this isn't just about one incident or one company. It's about changing an industry that has long struggled with diversity and inclusion. I outlined our new initiative, the programs, the partnerships, the goals, the coalition forming with other companies, starting with Rivaltech. This won't be easy, I told them. Real change never is. We'll face resistance, skepticism, and probably some backlash. But I believe Tech Vision can lead the way. The response was overwhelming. Questions, ideas, volunteers for various programs. People sharing their own experiences, their own hopes for change. After the meeting, I sat alone in my office, reflecting on the past week. From being denied entry to a room, to potentially changing an industry, it wasn't what I had expected when I walked into that summit. My phone rang. It was my mother. I saw you on the news, she said, standing up to those people. I just did what needed to be done. Do you remember what I told you when you started at that company? When you were just an intern? I smiled, remembering. You said, don't just get in the room, change it. And look at you now, changing not just a room but an entire industry. We talked a while longer, about my father who hadn't lived to see me become CEO, about the world my nieces and nephews were growing up in, about progress made and still to come. After we hung up, I turned to my computer to review the latest proposals for our initiative. There was so much to do. Programs to design, partnerships to forge, metrics to establish. A notification popped up on my screen. An email from the CEO of Tech Forward. Request for meeting, urgent. I let it sit there unanswered. They'd have to wait. I had more important things to focus on now. The weekend came, and for the first time in days, I took some time for myself. Went for a run in the park near my home. The same park where, just a few years ago, a woman had called security because she thought I didn't belong there. Now people recognized me, nodded in respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Turn on Channel 7. I did when I got home, just in time to catch a panel discussion about the tech industry's diversity problems. They were talking about our initiative, our coalition, experts weighing in, some supportive, some skeptical. One panelist, a veteran tech journalist, said something that stuck with me. "What makes this different is that it's coming from within, from leaders with the power to actually change things, not just talking about problems, but implementing solutions." Monday morning arrived with news that 3 more major tech companies had joined our coalition. Their CEOs had called over the weekend, wanting to be part of what we were building. In my inbox was another email from Tech Forward, and another. They were getting desperate now. Their stock was still falling. Clients were leaving. The damage to their reputation seemed irreparable. Part of me felt satisfaction at their predicament. They had made a choice that day at the summit, and now they were facing the consequences. But another part of me recognized an opportunity. Not for revenge, but for meaningful change. I finally replied to their emails agreeing to a meeting, not to reconcile or to renew our business relationship, but to offer them a different kind of opportunity. "We'll meet," I wrote, "but only to discuss how Tech Forward can become part of the solution to the very problem they exemplified." As I sent the email, I thought about that moment at the summit, being turned away while others walked past, the humiliation, the anger, the resolve that had followed. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the most important actions. This wasn't the path I had expected my career to take, but perhaps it was the one I needed to follow all along, not just to get in the room, but to change it. The Tech Forward CEO arrived at our offices looking like he hadn't slept in days. Thomas Wilson had built his company from nothing into an events powerhouse. Now it was crumbling around him because of one terrible decision his team had made. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, voice tight with stress. I nodded, gesturing to a chair across from my desk. This wasn't the usual meeting room where we entertained partners. This was my space, and I wanted him to feel the power dynamic. "Your emails mentioned a proposal," I said. Wilson straightened his tie, a nervous habit. "Yes, we understand that we've lost your business permanently, but we'd like to be part of your diversity coalition, to learn from this mistake and help create change in the industry." I studied him carefully. Was this genuine remorse or just a desperate attempt to save his company? "Why should I believe you're serious about this?" I asked. "Last week your staff treated me like I didn't belong in a VIP room. Now you want to join a diversity initiative?" "What happened was inexcusable," Wilson admitted. "I've spent days trying to understand how it happened. The truth is, it revealed blind spots in our company that I didn't know existed. Blind spots or embedded biases." He winced. "Both. We've fired the individuals directly involved, but that's just addressing symptoms. The problem runs deeper." At least he was being honest now. "What exactly are you proposing?" Wilson outlined his plan. Tech Forward would commit significant resources to our coalition, implement comprehensive diversity training, revamp their hiring practices, and create accountability metrics with real consequences for leadership if goals weren't met. "And most importantly," he finished, "we want to make this public. No hiding behind closed doors. Complete transparency about what happened, why it was wrong, and what we're doing to change." It was more than I'd expected. More than a PR move. This was the kind of structural change that might actually make a difference. "I'll consider it," I said, "but I need to see these commitments in writing. And I want to speak with your board." Wilson nodded, relief visible on his face. "Anything you need." After he left, Alex came in. "So what did he want?" I explained Wilson's proposal. "You're not seriously considering it?" Alex looked incredulous. "After what they did?" "I'm considering the impact. If Tech Forward makes these changes, it affects thousands of employees, hundreds of events, millions of attendees. That's meaningful reach. It feels wrong to help them after they humiliated you." I leaned back in my chair. "This isn't about my feelings, Alex. It's about changing systems. Sometimes that means working with people who've made mistakes if they're genuinely committed to doing better." "And you think Wilson is?" "I think he's desperate. But desperation can be a powerful motivator for change." Later that day, I received another visitor, Zoe Chen, a young black woman who worked in our engineering department. She'd sent me a message asking for a few minutes of my time. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, standing nervously in my doorway. "Not at all. Come in." She sat down, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wanted to thank you for what you did with Tech Forward. You don't need to thank me. It was the right thing to do. It meant a lot to me, and to others like me." She hesitated. "I've been in this industry 5 years. I could tell you stories that would make your blood boil. Times I was ignored in meetings. Asked if I was in the right room? Mistaken for administrative staff, I nodded. I'd experienced all of those things and more. But seeing our CEO refuse to accept that treatment," she smiled. "It made me feel like maybe things can change. That's why I did it," I told her. "Not just for myself, but for everyone who's felt that same disrespect." "There's something else," Zoe said. "I have an idea for the diversity initiative. Something that could help young engineers from underrepresented groups." For the next 20 minutes, she outlined a mentorship program unlike any I'd heard before, focused not just on technical skills but on navigating workplace politics, building confidence, and creating support networks. "This is excellent," I said when she finished. "Would you be willing to help develop it further?" Her eyes widened. "Me? I'm just a mid-level engineer. You're exactly who we need. Someone with first-hand experience and innovative ideas." After Zoe left, I added her to the team developing our initiative. It was a reminder of why this work mattered, and of the talent we often overlooked. The next day, I received Wilson's proposal in writing. It was comprehensive, with clear commitments and measurable outcomes. His board had unanimously approved it, sensing it was their only path to salvation. I called a meeting with our diversity initiative team, including Zoe, to review it. "They're desperate," Alex said, "but these commitments are substantial. If they follow through," Priya cautioned. "That's the real question, which is why I'm adding conditions," I said. "Quarterly public reporting, external auditing, and a seat on their board for someone from our initiative team." The team looked surprised. This was pushing beyond normal corporate partnerships into real structural change. "Will they agree to that?" Diane asked. "They don't have much choice. And frankly, it's the only way I'll believe they're serious." 2 days later, Wilson and his executive team returned. I presented our conditions. Wilson paled slightly at the board seat requirement but nodded. "We'll make it happen." And so a company that had denied me entry to a room became a partner in our coalition for change. Not out of goodwill, but out of necessity. Sometimes progress comes from unexpected places. As news of our partnership spread, reactions were mixed. Some praised it as a model for accountability and redemption. Others criticized me for working with Tech Forward at all. "You're giving them a way back," one critic wrote. "They should face permanent consequences." It was a fair point. But I wasn't interested in punishment for its own sake. I wanted change. Real, lasting change that would impact the entire industry. Our coalition continued to grow. 20 companies now, then 30. Some joined out of genuine commitment to diversity. Others, like Tech Forward, joined because they feared being left behind. Their motivations mattered less to me than their actions. A month after the summit incident, I was invited to speak at a major industry conference about our coalition. The irony wasn't lost on me, from being denied entry to a VIP room to being the keynote speaker. I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Cameras flashed. This wasn't just another CEO speech. This was a moment. "A month ago," I began, "I was denied access to a VIP area at the Tech Summit, not because I wasn't important enough, not because I wasn't a platinum sponsor, but because I didn't look like what some people think a tech CEO should look like." The audience was silent, listening intently. I could have accepted their apology, taken the upgraded access they later offered, and moved on. Many would have. Many do every day when faced with similar situations. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But I chose a different path, not just to reject their apology, but to use my position to create change. Because when you have power, real power, you have a responsibility to use it. I outlined our coalition's work, the programs, the partnerships, the measurable goals, the companies that had joined, including Tech Forward. Some questioned that decision, I acknowledged. Working with a company that had shown such disrespect. But true change isn't about punishment or cancellation. It's about transformation, about creating systems where such incidents become unthinkable. After my speech, the reception was overwhelming. People lined up to speak with me to offer support to join our coalition. One conversation stood out. A young black man, fresh out of college, approached me nervously. "Your speech meant everything to me," he said. "I'm just starting in this industry and I've been scared about what I might face. But seeing you up there, hearing what you're building, it gives me hope." Hope. That was the word that kept coming up. In emails and social media and conversations, what had started as a painful incident had somehow become a beacon of hope for so many. Back at the office, I found a gift on my desk. A custom-made VIP badge with my name and "Always Welcome" printed across it. A note from my team was attached. "For the man who doesn't need a badge to prove his worth." I smiled, touched by the gesture. But as I placed it in my drawer, I thought about all those who didn't have the platform I had, the power, the voice. This was never just about me or one incident. It was about them. That evening, I stayed late in my office reviewing proposals for our next phase. The coalition was growing faster than we'd anticipated. Demands for speaking engagements, partnership requests, program ideas poured in daily. I looked out my window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, another black professional was being questioned, doubted, excluded, someone without a CEO title to shield them, without the power to change company policies or cut million-dollar contracts. Tomorrow, we'd announce our first major program, scholarships for 100 students from underrepresented groups, with guaranteed internships at coalition companies. A small step, but an important one. The incident at the tech summit would fade from headlines. But the work we were doing because of it, that would continue. That would matter. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Finalized the mentorship program structure. Can't wait to share it tomorrow. Progress, not as fast as I'd like. Not as comprehensive as we needed. But real progress nonetheless. And it all started because someone thought I didn't belong in a room." 6 months after the Tech Summit incident, our diversity coalition had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. 57 companies now, representing over 500,000 employees. Programs running in 12 cities. Scholarships awarded, mentorships established, hiring practices transformed. But with growth came challenges. Some coalition members were more committed than others. Some joined for the PR benefits but dragged their feet on actual changes. And there was pushback. Articles questioning our methods. Executives complaining privately that we were pushing too hard. Too fast. "We need to talk about tech forward," Alex said during our weekly leadership meeting. "What's the issue?" I asked. "They're not meeting their diversity hiring targets. They're blaming market conditions, saying they can't find qualified candidates." The oldest excuse in the book, and one I'd heard too many times before. What does their board representative say? We had placed Diane on their board as part of our agreement. She says they're making efforts, but there's resistance from middle management. The C-suite is on board, but it's not filtering down. I nodded, unsurprised. This is why structural change is so difficult. It's not enough to have buy-in at the top. The entire organization has to transform. We decided to arrange a meeting with Wilson and his executive team, not to threaten or punish, but to help them overcome these obstacles, to share what had worked at other coalition companies. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Powell, the Rivaltech CEO. "Have you seen the latest industry diversity report?" he asked without preamble. "Not yet. It's on my desk. We're making progress. Hiring of underrepresented groups up 12% across coalition companies. Retention improved by 8%. "That's good news," I said, hearing the but in his voice. "It is. But we're facing more opposition than I expected." Not public opposition. No one wants to be seen fighting diversity initiatives these days. But behind closed doors, there's real resistance. This didn't surprise me. What kind of resistance? Budget complaints, concerns about lowering standards, questions about whether these programs give unfair advantages. The usual suspects indeed, the same arguments that had been used for decades to maintain the status quo. "How are you handling it?" I asked, directly. "Making it clear this isn't optional or peripheral. It's central to our business strategy moving forward." I smiled at that. Powell had come a long way in 6 months, and I'm sharing data, he continued. Hard numbers showing that diverse teams perform better, that these programs are finding talent we would have missed otherwise. Data helps, I agreed, but it doesn't always change deeply held beliefs. "No," Powell sighed. "That's the harder part. After we hung up, I thought about resistance, about how systems protect themselves, about the long game we were playing here. The next day, I met with Wilson and his tech-forward executives. Their offices were notably less opulent than 6 months ago. The company had survived, but not without wounds. We understand there are issues with meeting your diversity goals, I began after pleasantries were exchanged. Wilson nodded, looking uncomfortable. We're committed to the targets, but we're facing challenges. Tell me about these challenges. What followed was a familiar list of obstacles. Limited candidate pool, hiring managers who claimed they couldn't find qualified diverse candidates, concerns about cultural fit. I listened patiently, then leaned forward. Let me be blunt. These aren't new challenges. They're the same issues every company faces when trying to become more diverse, and they're all solvable. I outlined strategies that had worked elsewhere, changing where and how they recruited, revising job descriptions to eliminate biased language, training hiring managers to recognize and counteract unconscious bias. But most importantly, I finished, you need to change the narrative. This isn't about charity or optics. It's about finding the best talent, period. Talent that you've been missing because of flawed systems. Wilson nodded slowly. I understand. And I agree. But changing minds throughout an organization, it takes time. Time is fine. Excuses are not. As I left the meeting, I received a message from Zoe. Our mentorship program had just graduated its first cohort. 20 young professionals from underrepresented groups, all with job offers from top tech companies, including 3 at TechVision. Small victories. They mattered. Back at my office, I found Patricia waiting for me. The board wants an update on the coalition work, she said. Some members are concerned it's taking too much of your attention away from day-to-day operations. Here it was. The inevitable pushback. Even in my own company with a supportive board, there were limits to how much change people would accept without question. Our quarterly results speak for themselves, I pointed out. Revenue up, new products launching on schedule, stock price stable. I know, and I've made that clear. But there's a feeling that the coalition has grown beyond its original scope, that it's becoming political. I almost laughed. As if diversity in tech hadn't always been political. As if my entire existence as a Black CEO wasn't political in some way. The coalition is doing exactly what we intended, I said, creating meaningful change in an industry that desperately needs it, and positioning TechVision as a leader in that change. Patricia nodded. I agree, but I needed you to know the concerns, and to be prepared to address them at the next board meeting. After she left, I sat thinking about sustainability, about how to ensure this work continued even if support waned, even if I moved on someday. That night I couldn't sleep. The conversation with Patricia had unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Not because I feared losing board support. I was confident I could handle that. But because it reminded me how fragile progress could be. I got up and went to my home office, pulling up the latest reports from our coalition initiatives. The numbers were encouraging. More diverse hires, better retention, positive feedback from participants in our programs, but numbers didn't tell the whole story. What about culture change? What about those daily experiences of exclusion that no metric could capture? My phone rang, a surprise at this late hour. It was a young man named David, one of our scholarship recipients who is now interning at a coalition company. I'm sorry to call so late, he said, but I needed to talk to someone who would understand. What happened? I asked, immediately concerned. He described an incident at work, a team dinner where he was the only Black person present, comments that made him feel unwelcome, undermined, nothing overtly discriminatory, just those 1,000 small cuts that were so familiar to me. I don't know if I'm overreacting, he said. Maybe I should just let it go. You're not overreacting, I assured him. And you have options. We talked through those options. How to address it directly, how to involve HR if necessary, how to find allies within the company. The most important thing, I told him, is that you don't have to accept this as normal. Times are changing. Expectations are changing. After our call, I made notes for a new program, something focused on these everyday experiences, on creating truly inclusive cultures, not just diverse headcounts. The next morning, I arrived at the office early to find Alex already there. Looking troubled, we have a situation with one of our coalition partners, he said. It turned out one of the companies had been publicly committed to our diversity goals while privately instructing managers to maintain standards and a coded message to continue hiring as they always had. An employee leaked emails, Alex explained. It's going to hit the news today. This was exactly the kind of setback that could damage our entire coalition. Companies publicly supporting diversity while undermining it behind closed doors. We need to get ahead of this, I said. Full transparency. Acknowledge what happened, remove them from the coalition, and use it as a lesson for other members. The day that followed was intense. Press statements, emergency calls with coalition members, reassuring partners that this was an isolated incident. In the midst of it all, I received a message from Wilson at Tech Forward. Watching how you handle this, learning and recommitting to our goals, at least someone was paying attention. That evening, exhausted, I found myself thinking again about that moment at the Tech Summit. How a single incident of exclusion had led to all of this. The programs, the coalition, the changes both visible and invisible. Would it last? Would it matter in 5 years, in 10? Would the next generation of Black professionals face the same barriers, the same assumptions, the same 1,000 daily cuts? I didn't know. But I knew we had created momentum, had forced conversations that needed to happen, had made it harder to maintain the status quo. My phone buzzed with a text from David, the intern from our earlier call. I talked to my manager today. He listened. Really listened. Things will be better now, small victories. They mattered. The next day I had a scheduled appearance on a major business news network to discuss the coalition. Given the recent scandal with one of our partners, the interview would be more challenging than planned. Some would say this incident proves that corporate diversity initiatives are just window dressing, the interviewer suggested. That companies join for the PR benefits but don't make real changes. Some companies do exactly that, I agreed. Which is why we have metrics, why we have accountability, why we remove this company from our coalition immediately. But doesn't this damage the credibility of your entire effort? On the contrary, it shows that we're serious, that this isn't just talk. Companies that join our coalition are making real commitments, and there are consequences if they don't honor those commitments. The interviewer shifted tactics. Critics suggest that initiatives like yours create reverse discrimination, that they prioritize diversity over merit. An old, tired argument, one I'd heard countless times before. That assumes diversity and merit are somehow opposed, I replied. They're not. What our initiatives do is remove barriers that have prevented talented people from being recognized because of factors that have nothing to do with merit. The interview continued, but I could tell the message was resonating, not just with the interviewer but with viewers. The feedback on social media was immediate and mostly positive. Later that day, I received a call from a CEO whose company had been considering joining our coalition. After watching your interview, we're in, she said. Your clarity about expectations, about accountability, that's exactly what this industry needs. Another small victory. Another step forward. That night, looking out at the city from my office window, I thought again about sustainability, about how to ensure this work continued regardless of what happened next. The answer, I realized, wasn't in programs or policies alone. It was in the Davids of the world, the Zoes, the next generation of leaders who would carry this forward long after the Tech Summit incident was forgotten. Our job wasn't just to open doors. It was to ensure those doors stayed open, and to prepare those walking through them to open even more doors in the future. 1 year after the Tech Summit incident, I stood on a different stage, looking out at a different crowd. This was our coalition's first annual conference. 2,000 attendees from across the tech industry, gathered to share successes, challenges, and strategies for creating lasting change. A year ago, I was denied access to a VIP room. Today, we're building an industry where everyone has access to opportunity. The applause was genuine, enthusiastic, but I wasn't there to celebrate what we'd accomplished. I was there to push for more. We've made progress, I continued. Hiring of underrepresented groups up 17% across coalition companies. Retention improved by 12%. New pathways created for talented individuals who might have been overlooked in the past. I paused, letting those numbers register. But metrics only tell part of the story. What about belonging? What about those daily experiences that no spreadsheet can capture? The subtle messages that tell someone they don't fit, they don't belong, they aren't valued. The room was silent now, attentive. That's our next frontier. Not just diversity in numbers, but genuine inclusion in experience. And that's a harder challenge. One that requires deeper change, not just in hiring practices, but in company cultures, in mindsets, in assumptions about what talent looks like, sounds like, comes from. For the next hour, I outlined our vision for year 2. New programs focused on culture change, new metrics that attempted to capture the uncountable, those daily experiences of inclusion or exclusion, new accountability structures that went beyond hiring numbers. After my keynote, I met with coalition members, program participants, partners. The energy was palpable. This wasn't just another industry conference. This was a movement gaining momentum. Among the attendees was Thomas Wilson, the tech-forward CEO. His company had survived its crisis, though diminished. They'd lost clients, revenue, market share. But they'd also transformed in ways I hadn't expected. "We're meeting our targets now," Wilson told me proudly. "All of them. And not because we're forced to, but because our teams see the value." "What changed?" I asked. "Everything," he said simply. "Starting with me, with how I understood the problem, with what I prioritized." We were interrupted by a young woman I didn't recognize. She approached nervously, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Walker, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm an event coordinator with Tech Forward, and I wanted to personally ensure everything is to your satisfaction." I smiled, noting the irony. "Everything is excellent, thank you." After she left, Wilson shook his head. "A year ago, my staff denied you entry to a VIP room. Now they're making sure you're treated like royalty. That's change." It was change. But was it enough? Later that day, I moderated a panel discussion with 5 young professionals from our various programs. Among them was David, the intern who had called me late that night, and Zoe, who had developed our mentorship program. They spoke eloquently about their experiences, the barriers they'd faced, the opportunities our programs had provided, the changes they still wanted to see. "The most important thing I've learned," David said, "is that I have the right to expect better, that I don't have to accept exclusion as normal." Zoe nodded. "And that we have a responsibility to create change for those coming after us, just as you did for us, Mr. Walker." Their words moved me. This was why the work mattered. Not just for statistics or press releases or board presentations, but for real people, real careers, real lives. After the panel, I found Patricia waiting for me. "The board is impressed," she said, "with the conference, with the coalition's growth, with everything you've built." "Good. Because we're just getting started. They've approved the expanded budget for year 2, unanimously." This was significant. A year ago, there had been concerns about the scope of our work, about whether it was becoming too political. Now there was unanimous support for expansion. "What changed their minds?" I asked. "Results," Patricia said simply. "Both the measurable kind, our company's performance, positive press, industry leadership, and the less tangible benefits. The culture shift within TechVision itself. The talent we're attracting now. The energy." She was right. Our own company had been transformed by this work. Employee engagement was up, turnover down, innovation accelerated as more diverse perspectives shaped our products. The business case for diversity was proving itself in real time. That evening, the coalition hosted a gala dinner. Awards were presented to companies making exceptional progress. Scholarships announced for the next cohort of students. New partnerships unveiled. I found myself seated next to Richard Powell, the Rivaltech CEO who had spoken up for me that day at the Tech Summit. "Did you ever imagine it would grow into this?" he asked, gesturing at the room full of industry leaders now committed to our cause. "Honestly? No, I was just angry about being disrespected." Powell laughed. "The best movements often start that way, with one person who's had enough." "It's not about me anymore," I said. "It never really was." "No. But you were the catalyst, the right person, in the right position, at the right moment." I looked around the room. At Wilson, who had learned the hard way that exclusion had consequences. At Zoe, now leading our mentorship program full-time. at David, recently promoted at his company, at dozens of other lives touched by what we'd built. The question now, Powell said, is where we go from here. How we ensure this isn't just a moment, but a permanent change. That question had been on my mind as well. How to make this sustainable. How to embed it so deeply in the industry that it couldn't be undone. We institutionalize it, I said. Make it part of how business is done, not a separate initiative, but core strategy. The next morning, the final day of our conference, I announced our biggest move yet. The coalition would become an independent industry organization with its own staff, funding, and governance structure, no longer dependent on any one company or leader, including me. This ensures the work continues regardless of who sits in any particular CEO chair, I explained, including mine. The announcement generated excitement, questions, media coverage. But for me, it represented something more personal. A recognition that lasting change required more than individual leadership. It required systems, structures, sustainability. After the conference ended, I returned to my regular CEO duties, product launches, earnings calls, strategy sessions, the day-to-day work of running a technology company. But the coalition, now an independent entity, continued to grow. More companies joined, more programs launched, more lives changed. 6 months later, I received an invitation to speak at the next Tech Summit, the same event where I'd been denied entry to the VIP room. The same organization, though under new leadership now. I accepted, seeing it as a moment to measure how far we'd come, and perhaps to close a circle that had opened 18 months earlier. When I arrived at the summit, I was greeted with respect, escorted to the VIP area without question. No one questioned whether I belonged there. Progress, but not enough. Because as I looked around that VIP room, I still saw too few faces that looked like mine. Still saw the tech industry's diversity problem reflected in who had access to these spaces of power and influence. My keynote speech acknowledged how far we'd come but focused on how far we still had to go. The true measure of our success, I told the audience, isn't whether I'm welcomed in the VIP room today. It's whether the next generation of talented individuals, regardless of their race, gender, background, or any other factor unrelated to their abilities, find all rooms open to them. After the speech, a young black woman approached me. She introduced herself as a junior engineer at a major tech company. "Your story changed things for me," she said. "When my manager saw me differently after the Tech Summit incident made news, when my ideas started being heard in meetings, when I was finally promoted after being passed over twice." Her experience was both heartening and sobering. Heartening that change had reached her. Sobering that it had taken a public incident involving a CEO to make her company see her value. "We're not done," I told her. "Not even close." "I know," she replied, "but we're moving forward. And now I know I don't have to accept being excluded." On the flight home, I reflected on the past 18 months, on how a moment of humiliation had sparked a movement, on how systems resist change, but also how they can be transformed with enough pressure, enough persistence, enough power applied in the right places. Back at my office, I found a package waiting for me. Inside was a framed photo of our first scholarship recipients, now all employed at top tech companies. A note was attached. "You open doors, we'll open more." That evening, I called my mother, as I often did, to share updates on our coalition work. "I spoke at the Tech Summit today," I told her. "The same event where they turned me away from the VIP room. Full circle," she said. "How did it feel?" I thought about that. About the mix of satisfaction and impatience I'd felt. About the progress made and the work still to do. "Like a milestone," I said finally. "But not the destination." "It never is," my mother replied with the wisdom of someone who had seen other movements for change in her lifetime. "But each milestone matters." She was right, of course. Each step forward mattered, even as the path stretched far ahead. Each door opened mattered, even as many remained closed. Each mind changed mattered, even as old biases persisted. The next morning, I met with our company's leadership team to discuss quarterly results, new product developments, strategic priorities, the normal business of running a technology company. But on my desk was a report from the now independent coalition, new programs launching, new companies joining, new lives being changed, and in my inbox was an email from a young engineer I'd never met. Your story gave me courage to speak up when I was excluded. Thank you. That was the real impact. Not in industry-wide statistics, though those mattered. Not in program participation numbers, though those were important. But in individual lives, in moments of courage. In doors opened that might otherwise have remained closed. 18 months ago, I'd been denied entry to a VIP room because I didn't look like what some people thought a tech CEO should look like. That moment of disrespect had sparked anger, action, and ultimately, a movement for change. Not because I was special, but because I had the platform, the power position to do something about it, to turn a personal humiliation into industry-wide reckoning.